I originally wanted to make this video about how awesome the Raspberry Pi Zero 2 was going to be at serving as a simple media server. However, that didn't happen. I wanted to do some simple tests to see what it was capable of, just using the Wi-Fi because I didn't have a USB hub to also connect an Ethernet adapter. I had to choose between an external hard drive that was storing the test files or Ethernet. I chose the external hard drive. At first, the test was going fine. I was happily surprised that the Wi-Fi was performing as expected, till it wasn't. The following clip shows what happened. Here we are on the Raspberry Pi Zero 2. Let's download this 1 GB test file, and we'll save it to downloads. I'll press download, and let's get started. So it starts off pretty good, 5.6 megabytes per second. There it is, doing pretty well. You know, it's moving along, and you can see that the CPU is being used, surprisingly, more than I would think it would be used. But it's moving along, so I'm going to speed this up because it's a 2-minute download. So about a minute left in, and you can see the speed is starting to slow down a little bit. And all of a sudden it just stops. Nothing. Totally frozen. And if when I go over to the Raspberry Pi Zero, super hot. The Wi-Fi chip is super hot, so it must have overheated or something. And as you can see, it's not an image, it's real time and nothing. So might as well just go ahead and stop this test. That was kind of disappointing. This video was supposed to be about the Raspberry Pi Zero 2, and I wasn't planning to even mention the Orange Pi Zero, but after the failure, I was curious how it would fare. The Orange Pi Zero was older and is running an inferior Cortex A7 versus the Cortex A53 and the RPi Zero 2. I will disclose that I did not use the onboard Wi-Fi in the Orange Pi because it's awful, and it has built-in Ethernet, so why wouldn't I use the Ethernet? So I admit, this is not a fair test, but it was never about speed. It was about whether it could complete the task. The following clip shows what happened. So we have the Orange Pi Zero here, classic Orange Pi Zero, wrong temperature. So let's go ahead and download this 1 GB test file. Here we go, and saturating that 100 megabit Ethernet connection, 11 megabytes per second. Understandable that it's twice as fast as the Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi Zero. But as you can see, it seems to be using less CPU, even though it's an older ARM CPU. And we're going along here, so I'm going to speed this up. Coming to the end, slows down, speeds up, slows down, and we're done. So nothing wrong there. And it never froze, never overheated, was barely warm. I don't know why. This is really surprising. I was not expecting the Orange Pi Zero to actually finish this test and do way better than the Raspberry Pi Zero 2. I never meant for this to be a versus video. I was just disappointed that the Raspberry Pi couldn't complete what I would consider a simple task. I was not stressing the CPU, and yet it still overheated and froze. And yes, it didn't have a heatsink, but still, I wasn't pushing this thing very hard. Now I can't help but think that if the Orange Pi Zero did so well, how would the Orange Pi Zero 2 perform in this test? I wanted to get a Raspberry Pi 4 pretty badly, but now I'm not so sure. At least I can order an Orange Pi Zero 2 and get it. The Raspberry Pi 4, not so much. I hope this video was interesting to you. It was to me. Be sure to like the video if it was. I want to hear your thoughts on this, so please comment, and thanks for spending your time with me.